everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Music Podcast. This is a very special episode. I am sitting with one of the most legendary and iconic bass players in rock history, Mr. Billy Sheehan. Billy has been a member of bands like Mr. Big, and I'm only going to scratch the surface here. David Lee Roth's band, Winery Dogs, Sons of Apollo, of course, Talas, which we're going to spend the bulk of our time here with, because Talas is getting ready to release, I can't believe I'm saying this, a new full-length record called 1985 on September 23rd. And it's going to be their debut for the Metal Blade Records label, which is really cool to see too.
Yeah.
Billy, absolute honor. Let me say, first of all, absolute honor to have you here.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Talas, where it all started, really, I mean, first real big act, a full-length album. This is 1985. Great cover too. If people have not seen this, with the broken down kind of decrepit DeLorean on the cover, just with the raccoon looking into it, it's fantastic. Really great cover. This is the record that you were going to make when the band split up, right?
Well, there wasn't necessarily a plan to do this record specifically, but we had all these songs and they were ready for a proper recording. We did get a record deal too. Danny Goldberg from Gold Mountain Records signed Talas just as it ended. And he went on to manage Nirvana, I think, and he's quite a big guy in the record biz. And we also just got signed by the William Morris Agency, hence the Yngwie tour. But then the other phone call we got the same week, all these calls came in, was from David Lee Roth's office. And that was at a point, I just, as much as I love my band and I want to stick with them right to the very end, if necessary. But the offer from Dave was just too good to pass up. So I had to make my move.
Yeah. And what a legendary move that was too. That David Lee Roth band, legendary. Steve Vai and then the Bissonets, and just a crazy great record that you guys made together.
Thanks.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, so we kind of left things as they were back in 1985, and we had a lot of songs. Some of the songs appeared on a live record, but that record was kind of a hurry up, and it really didn't. It wasn't. I wasn't completely satisfied with it. We had just been together a short amount of time. We got pressure. Come on, we'll do a record right away, and then let us play a couple of weeks first. So unfortunately, we had to do what we had to do, and so now these songs are all from that era, and we had a choice of either modernizing them and bringing them up to speed and polishing them up in a new modern way, or get in a time machine and go back to 1985. And obviously we chose the latter.
Right.
Hugh Syme did the album cover. Is an incredible cover artist in so many ways. He's done a lot of huge bands and all. And he was friends with Phil Naro as well. So we owe him a great debt of gratitude for such an incredible job on the cover.
Yeah, it really is. Speaking of time machines too, of course, that Back to the Future whole thing there. And it's just really a great cover. And Hugh Syme is an incredible artist.
Really is. Really is.
Yeah. Now, Talas fans will recognize a few of these songs from that live record. High Speed on Ice, of course. Intermounting Flame, Crystal Clear, and Do You Feel Any Better? My personal favorite here. These are studio versions. Really, really, it's so cool to hear that, because we haven't had that. What did you have a working title for the next record? This is called 1985 because it's that.
No, there wasn't. When I left, they were going to do a record because I left the band with, said, well, if you want to get another bass player and continue on, you're welcome to. And they survived for a little while and it didn't quite work out. So they went their separate ways. But Yeah, they were working on a record themselves without me, but it never came to be. So I'm not sure what that one was called, but no, this one just came about. I just thought, and a little bit of a play also on Van Halen's 1984, and then in
Right.
1985, Dave, pulled me out to LA, and I started that with him.
Right.
But so much was happening in 1985. Uh, Particularly in the music scene. So bands were just exploding, and the
Hmm.
music scene was gigantic. Sunset Strip was packed with people every single night. Was Mardi Gras out there, and there's
Yeah.
millions of bands playing millions of places. So it was quite an amazing time for music. So that kind of led us to the simplicity of just saying 1985.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's great to be back in 1985, actually. I
Yeah.
gotta say. Now tell me about the song Black and Blue. I hear that's the only track that wasn't like written in that time period. It's a new track.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, yeah, tell me about the song, and is that the band's way of saying we're back and maybe writing new music?
Well, that was one of Phil's songs, and we had performed live a bunch of shows once we got back together a few years ago, and we played that live a couple of times, and it went over really well. And I just thought, well, let's put something new on here, and it has an extra added benefit of Phil's son James sings along with him, and James has got a great voice, and he's a
Awesome.
wonderful performer as well in his own right. And Phil was very, very proud to have his son on the record with him as well. And we didn't know we're making the record of the tragedy that was about to unfold, sadly, by losing Phil. So I'm so glad in retrospect that we did this so he and his son James could be together on this record. So that means a lot to us all.
Yeah, yeah, and all of us as fans for
Yeah,
sure.
great.
What a spectacular performance.
Yeah, he sang
Oh,
so great, so
oh,
powerful.
man.
He was shouldering the knowledge that he was in trouble too. We didn't know exactly how bad it was, the rest of us, but when the record was done, it just kind of fell apart quickly for him,
Right.
uh, with his health, and we lost him soon after, sadly. And it was, but knowing that now and knowing how hard he pushed himself singing impresses me even more than I already was, which was already a lot. And his determination and what kind of heart and soul he had to be able to push himself, knowing, shouldering the burden of knowing what might be coming down the road for him. So
Right.
that was quite an amazing phenomenon to witness, and he did really great. And he was a sweet, wonderful, friendly, enjoyable person, one of the finest humans I've ever known. Just what a great guy. Life is not fair, that's for damn sure, because he really deserved so much more and a much longer life, of course.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. And yeah, I mean, shouldering that, like you say, and having that positive attitude and still being a
Yeah,
pleasure to be around.
yeah,
And not only performing like he has on this record, all of that, had to be a great human being. I wish I would have known him.
yeah.
Really special.
Quite an awesome guy, yeah.
Yeah.
And then our Mark Miller too, our drummer. He's just a great, great, great guy, and what a spectacular drummer. I
Yeah.
always cite that Mike Portnoy sent me a photo of the first Dream Theater rehearsal. Was Mike and the guitarist and bass player at that point, and they had and Mike is wearing his Talas shirt because he used to come and see Mark Miller with Talas at L'Amour's in Brooklyn and some other New York area clubs and stuff. So
Right.
he, I'm so glad to know that he was a fan of the band and Mark Miller. And Mark is just such a powerhouse drummer, and he did an amazing job on this record as well. We had Mitch Perry play on the two songs that he brought to the band, "On the Take" and "Crystal Clear," which was so glad to have him on the record. We tried to get Johnny Angel as well. He was the guitarist that replaced Mitch, but
Mhm.
uh, scheduling didn't work out, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
we certainly got in touch with him. And then for guitar, we used a friend of Phil's named Kira, who did just a great, great job. So we're very pleased with the way everything came out.
Oh yeah, it's crazy, and Mitch is just a genius. Talked to Mitch in the past, and there's nothing that guy doesn't that can't do. He's
Yeah,
just
he's a great, great player. Great player.
wow, is he so good.
Yeah.
And you recorded um at your drummer's house, right?
And the house that Mark built, literally from the
Yeah.
ground up, he built that house. And inside, it's perfect. Everything is just done to perfection. He's quite a craftsman. And the drum kit, basically, he put the drum kit together himself too. So, uh, in the house that Mark built, on the kit that Mark built, we laid down the basis for all the tracks there, and had a riot doing it. Had such a great time. It was really, really wonderful.
And I would imagine that's very important for you at this stage too. You've done it all. You've had the record company breathing down your neck. You've had, band squabbles possibly, and that recording under that duress maybe. You've done all of that. It's gotta be fun for you now, doesn't it? I mean, otherwise you wouldn't
Oh,
do it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a low pressure situation, which I prefer low pressure.
Yeah. We all do.
And I've been under some very, very high pressure situations, so it's a welcome situation, and it's just great to be amongst a bunch of friends and people that you would hang out with normally, whether you were in a band or not, and it was really a wonderful time recording this record. When we did the vocals, Phil was in Toronto, where his sons live, and he was back and forth between Toronto and Rochester a lot. It's just kind of his second hometown, and a wonderful and incredible engineer, Russ McKay, did the vocal recording. So I would be here in Nashville in my home on Zoom or FaceTime as our talkback video and mic, and then on my music computer over here, we would have a live feed from the console, the mixing console, through software called Audio Movers in real time. So I could produce the vocals sitting here in Nashville while Phil was there, and see him, on camera, and see Russ on camera, and get the live feed. And it worked out really well. Russ did an amazing job of coordinating a lot of, because recording during the pandemic was tough at best. So he did a wonderful job coordinating that all and make it easy for us to get some amazing vocal performances out of Phil.
Yeah, see, and that's it's a blessing to have that technology. Sometimes the technology gets a little bit irritating, with everything, but boy, it wouldn't be done if we didn't have that, right?
Yeah, I was an early adopter of almost all things digital and digital recording and things of that nature. So I do love technology, what it's done for music. If you have a laptop, you have the equivalent or more even of a studio worth millions of dollars back in the day.
Right.
And you could do things you could have never done back then as well. So I enjoy the whole digital recording experience. And it's becoming quite invisible and in the background, so you can just perform and do your thing. And when I record, I always have an engineer for me to play bass and hit the buttons at the same time. I'm not good at that. Right. So, but it is really incredible what you can do now. So it makes the recording experience very enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. I want to read a little bit of a review that I just saw for the first Talas record, and it was a positive review. So it said, "A peerless virtuoso and a shameless showboat, unafraid to unleash frenzied lead bass all over this LP, to the point of drowning out guitarist Dave Constantino on many of these cuts." So. And a positive review. Well, that's what we love about our Billy Sheehan. You play bass like a lead guitar. 99% of us love that. You got every once in a while, I read something of this nature where it says, just hold down the low end and let the guitar player do his thing or whatever. Have you ever, when you look back, do you ever feel like you overplayed anything? And was it ever a problem for your guitar players?
Well, I'm don't subscribe to the notion let's all play the same and all sound the same too, and play the same bass to the same amp, and they'll all be just the same. Viva la difference. There's great players that I love, that play very simple and play just basic root notes, and I love them. I love their tone. I love their bass playing. There's many songs where I've done that as well. "To Be With You" was my biggest hit, and That's pretty simple bass. There's no distortion on the bass. It's just straight up. I love that. Just Take My Heart, another one. It was just a ballad, pretty simple bass. But I grew up listening to, first of all, Jamie Jamerson and Motown is all over the neck all the time.
Yep.
Paul McCartney, all over the neck. Amazing. Paul Samuel-Smith and the Yardbirds. Brilliant. Back and forth, call and response with Jeff Beck on guitar. Tim Bogert, just a brilliant player. And Entwistle, Jack Bruce, all these guys were active players. Mm-hmm. And when it became a guitar world, as opposed to a music or band world, a lot of guitar players were just of the mind, hold an E note while I solo all over the place. So the moment the bass player does more than an E note, suddenly he's violated some unknown statute, and some people get angry. But I grew up playing mostly in a three-piece band, in the three-piece version of Talas, and we didn't have a rhythm guitar player or keyboard, and I moved around a lot to make up for what wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And it was never my intention. It was my intention to play with. And bands that were ideal for me, David Lee Roth band, I got the chance to do anything I wanted. All those notes are my choice. No one was breathing down my neck telling me what to play. That's all my decision. Same with Mr. Big. That's all my decision, you know. So that's how I play. And if you want something different, then I can give you phone numbers to a dozen guys that could give you something different. So go right ahead. But I just wanted to do more. And it was never an ego thing. It was a musical thing for me. Mm-hmm. Trying to look introspectively. I hope I'm being honest with. I think I'm being honest with myself, and just because I loved. There's all these notes on this neck, you know, and why not utilize them? And I'm also a big jazz fan and classical music fan, and there's a lot going on in all those things. Great Ray Brown or Ron Carter or Jocko or Stanley, guys that played some amazing playing. And the whole idea of lead bass, I think, is a giant mistake. I don't believe there's anything such thing as lead bass. There's bass that you play one way or the other, but I never looked at it as a lead instrument. We were always a band, and the band was the band, and the band wove the sound together. And I'm all about the drums and watching the drums and following the drums because I do that. That's very important to me. I can get away with a lot more movement because I'm locked in with what the drummer's doing. A couple of famous bass players back in the day wrote an article about that. Well, how come some people get away with playing all these notes and others don't? But we were locked into the drums. You can get away with a lot.
Right.
But yeah, I love guitar players and I love bands and I love pulling back and stopping and holding a note. But I do a lot. Sometimes that reputation comes from people come to the show, they pull their phone out and record my bass solo and post that. They don't post me To Be With You or I'm No Angel or any of the other songs that I play with other bands. You know, so people get that idea. But yeah, I enjoy what I do. I do it so it's enjoyable to me. But I'm not playing for me. I'm playing for an audience. And I'm playing to entertain them and have them enjoy the evening. And that's my real goal. You know, I live to play live. I play live to live, and that means making an audience happy. So whatever it takes for me to do that, that's what I'm glad to do.
And it is enjoyable to watch you, my friend. It is crazy. It's great. Have you had any guitar players in any of these bands say, "Hey, Billy, sit back a little bit. give me a little bit."
Oh, I do. I am the. It rarely is there any controversy at all. I mean, I know I'm a bass player. I know when the guitarist solo is. There you go. I'm holding a G underneath you, and some guitar players can't play over changes, and that's a thing. It's an acquired skill. The changes are going on underneath you, and you're playing according to those changes instead of playing in one key and soloing in one key only. So if the bass is moving, there's a counterpoint, left hand, right hand on the piano. They counterpoint each other. They don't play the exact same thing. And
Right.
so that counterpoint is essential to pretty much everything Bach did on a keyboard. The counterpoint, one line going one way and one line going the other, and it creates a third thing. That's is a beautiful thing. So I like to move around under a solo, and depending on who it is. And I play with some very complex players. Steve Vai I play with a lot.
Right.
Paul Gilbert, amazing. Ron from Sons of Apollo. Richie Kotzen, fantastic. Did records with Tony McAlpine and Greg Howe, and a lot of other guys. So it's never been an issue, actually, really.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you know, with those names, you know, they're not amateur hour, that's for sure.
Well, and it's a matter of a question of taste and what the song requires. Like I mentioned to be with you before, I love that song and I love playing that song, and it's a very simple, very McCartney-ish. I took a couple moves from Paul McCartney specifically on that song because I love his bass playing so much. But yeah, it's never really been much of a problem at all. And if somebody wants me to do a certain thing, like when I play with Steve Vai and Steve Vai's band, that's Steve Vai's thing. So what do you want from me? You know, what do you want here? So you tell me how you want it, and that's how I'll do it. If it's a band that I'm in, that I'm a part of, then of course I would do what I felt was appropriate. But of course, listen to anybody else who had a suggestion, whatever. It's cool with me.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Now, I've heard you say in the past that you don't read music, which I was shocked by, because you know your complexity, your precision, and the way you play seems very structured. But it's also free and without bounds. Do you think the fact that you don't read has played into the way you play, your style?
Possibly, and I just heard recently from. I did a rock and roll fantasy camp, and one of the drummers was the husband of Buddy Rich's daughter.
Yes.
And he had amazing stories about Buddy Rich. And one of them was that Buddy did not want his band to read because they would be stiffer reading the notes than they would be just playing it. And I thought I was quite pleased to hear that. Mm-hmm. Some people can read like just the same way somebody can take a book or a script or a piece of paper, read off it as though they're saying it from the heart for the first time ever. Other people reading, you can tell they're reading. You can tell they don't talk like that normally. Right. They're obviously reading. So that is to some degree a factor, I think. But I wish I could read. I wish I knew more about it. I practice hours every day, learning new things, rehabilitating old things that I've forgotten or left behind. And you know, I don't know a lot about music technically, but I do know what I need to do to play and get what the notes I need to get. Sometimes I'm lucky to have friends like Steve Vai or Tony McAlpine or Jeff Berlin or somebody like that. I can call them up and say, you know, what chord is this? That's an A augmented 11th, flatted 5th, whatever it is.
Definitely. What's the most challenging thing? I mean, you know, I listen to what you're playing, and it's just mind blowing most of the time. So much of what you do is just so intricate and challenging. What is the most challenging? Has there been a gig, a studio thing, you know, a session that you've done where you got this thing and you just couldn't, you had a lot of trouble with it? It's just, you know, really, what's the most challenging thing that you've ever had in front of you?
Well, the most difficult track I've ever recorded relatively recently for a young lady from Japan. She's kind of a prog singer, dresses in a gown, a beautiful woman, and her band is pretty adventurous, and she's quite popular. Mari Hamada is her name, and she sent me 2 tracks to record, and the second one was probably the toughest thing I've ever done, because the bass part written by a keyboard player, and just as a orchestra leader knows, you can't have the timpanis playing Paganini violin caprices. Right. You just can't do it. The keyboard player didn't really understand, in my humble opinion, the essence of bass as an instrument. and he had everything way down low in the B on the B string of a 5 or 6 string bass, super fast, super complex, super close note harmonies, and it took me and my engineer about 2 days to get through it, but we got it.
Wow.
Yeah, it came out good. Matter of fact, I got to get in touch with her. I was going to have do a mix where the MIDI bass that I was supposed to play, copy, and my bass, my version of it, and have it man versus machine.
Right.
It is unbelievable. It's the super high speed oddball harmony note choices. The piece sounds great, but the bass part was tough. That was tough. That was one of the toughest ever. And another one we did. I think it was Freak Show Excess off Steve Vai's, one of his records I played on a few years ago. Mm-hmm. He gave me a couple songs to go home and learn and come back to the studio the next day. I came back in and I had it down. We got it. Okay, I got it. Great. So we laid it down, and I got every note I was supposed to get. He goes, man, but let me ask you a question. Can I see how you're playing that? I go, yeah. I showed him. He goes, could you finger it the way I finger it? So,
no.
It's harder to unlearn something than it is to learn it the first time. So I said, we're going to have to give me some time. Okay, so I went back home and I learned his fingering because he wanted it to be that tight. And it was. He's a great producer, great recording artist as well. Wow. So we got that. That was a tough one too. But it was when we played that live, it was a blast. There was one part in the middle that was kind of a 7/4 jam. But it was very similar to one piece of music by Frank Zappa from the old days that I loved, and I played along with 1,000 times. Okay. So it was real natural for me to play it. And we always would have a riot playing that live and kind of look at each other in memory of Frank and all that. So it's pretty cool. So I enjoy working with Steve very much.
Steve is he's an animal. That guy's crazy. He's so good. You ever consider writing this stuff down? You know, all the experiences. I ever consider the book?
Yeah. I've talked to a couple guys about it. Greg Renoff. I just finished reading his book on Ted Templeman. It was a great read, quite a great thing. And he's talked a little bit about it. And I just met someone recently that is an author that we talked about doing something like that. So maybe at some point. I know that I'm not a writer, but I'm kind of a language buff, so I can generally express myself in the written word accurately and in a picturesque way. Right. So I might try to write down a lot of it myself, and then go to someone for as far as how things are structured, and a proper editor to look at it and say this goes, this stays. So we'll see. But I'd like to. But I have a lot of experiences in music, but even before that, all just my life experiences earlier on. There's some hilarious stories, and we've been through some adventures, that's for sure.
See, and that's something we don't get a lot of, your life away from music. Now, I in recent years, but you're growing up and stuff like that. I would love to. I'd love to read your story. It would be great. I really look forward to an autobiography. I hope you get that done.
It's certainly on my list of things that I would like to do relatively soon, because now is a good time.
Yeah. What about a cookbook?
People always ask me for recipes, and I don't really have any recipes. Okay. I just kind of. My mom was like that. She would cook just kind of off the cuff and I'll put some of this in, and we got some of this left over. Well, that'll work here, So it kind of goes together like that. But I could codify it into a recipe, I imagine. But even myself, if I have to look something up and get a recipe, I'll probably doctor it up or alter it in some way. I had a fennel bulb the other day, and I was going to just cut it up and have it as like an appetizer just to eat. It's kind of a licorice flavor. It's very, very, very delicious. Mm-hmm. So I thought, is there a salad you can make with a fennel? And I Googled it. Bang, there it was. And I got a grater and shaved it all down. Add some Parmesan and olive oil and a couple other things, a couple spices. I forgot what they were. I have to look it up again. That was fantastic. But I altered it though. I added a few things that I normally wouldn't have. They weren't on the recipe. So we'll see about that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I know you love to cook, and your posts, with the food and everything, you do it looks like you do a wonderful job, man.
Yeah,
No
I
doubt.
did the Parmesan broth the other day, and uh, I didn't know, but it's quite a thing in Italy to utilize the Parmesan rinds. Now, the Parmesan rinds have usually writing on them, but that ink is food safe ink. So you just put them you collect them throughout the year, put them in the freezer, and when you're ready to put them in a pan and boil it, bring it to a boil and simmer it for overnight. Really, the whole house smells like a giant wheel of Parmesan. It's fantastic. And
Wow.
you can cook lentils or rice or beans or pasta in that broth, so they become real Parmesan-y. It was quite
Wow.
good. So a lot of comments on that.
Yeah, that's pretty. Wow, I never thought about that. That's pretty great. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
Or another one, I use the water in the jar of jalapenos.
Oh,
If you need
yeah.
moisture or something, use that because it's got the pickling spice and a little bit of jalapeno bite as well. So that was one of my things that I started to do on my own, only because I don't like to waste food. So I see the whole jar. This has got to be good for something. Oh,
Right.
cook the rice in that. Okay.
There you go. Yeah, no doubt. It's great. It's great. Hey, I hope you ate lunch. You're getting hungry. You mentioned that the book is part of, like a bucket list, something you want to do. Do you have anything else that you've always wanted to do in your life that is, kind of chomping at the bit for you?
Well, I don't know. I've been pretty lucky to have done a lot of the things that I set out to do, which is pretty. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do things of that nature in bands and such. Traveled all over the world many times and
Mhm.
got some beautiful bases and we things are going pretty well. I don't know. There's a couple of musicians that I wanted to play with. Most of them have sadly passed on. Paco de Lucia was one of them. Is
Hmm.
a, uh, a Spanish
Yep.
flamenco guitarist, quite awesome. Uh, but
Yep.
yeah, I pretty much got most of those accomplished. I think I'm the only guy that has ever played with every member of Van Halen.
Ooh.
You know,
Wow. Yeah.
so I played with Sammy.
And Sammy, yeah.
I
All right.
played with Gary Sharon. We did the Who tribute thing.
Hmm.
Played with Michael Anthony. We did a bass, a thing with Ken Hensley from Uriah Heep at a NAMM show.
Oh, that's
We
cool.
played Steelin' and Easy Living. That was pretty cool.
Pretty
Of
cool.
course, I played with Dave. I went up to the house and played with Ed and Alex. I did a live show with Ed too in Chicago at Jason Becker benefit years ago.
Nice.
And I never played music with Wolfie, but on the way home from that
Oh,
show,
yeah.
Ed was kind enough to have me fly with him. He had chartered a little jet, so he was kind enough to ask me along. And Wolfie was there, but Ed wanted to sleep, so I took Wolfie and got some paper and pencils, and we were drawing, animals and
So cool.
because he was a little tiny kid. So
Yep.
technically, I did play with him. It wasn't me.
Right.
But I haven't gotten it, but I hear his record is just fantastic. So I should go remind myself today and download it right away. I hear he's got a really talented kid, and I'm very pleased to see he's out there playing.
Yeah, it's really cool to see him playing and carrying on that legacy of
So great.
his
So
family. Yeah, no doubt. I Tour. Are we going to see Talas on? I heard that you want to take Talas on the road. Is that? I know you
well,
love to play live.
we don't know if we can find a singer that can do Phil justice. We'll see. We would love to. We're probably next year. Right now, we're booking Winery Dogs for next year. A lot of shows because we have a new record coming out, and we might do some Mr. Big at some point next year. We're not sure,
Wow.
possibly, and maybe even some Niacin also with a band I have with Dennis Sanders.
Wow.
That's all right, but. Nothing is here for this year other than our annual Christmas show we do in Buffalo, New York, every just Christmas time, like a week before Christmas or something. Other than that, not much going on for live performance. But next year is being booked up pretty solid, so I'm hoping to be gone for the whole year, playing every night if possible.
Does your wife know that?
She comes out and joins me too.
That's cool. That's cool. I gotta ask you, you mentioned that Mr. Big thing. Do you have somebody in mind behind the kit?
Possibly looking at a couple people.
Okay.
We love playing with Matt Starr. He was really great, but we need a higher pitched voice. Matt's a great singer, but he doesn't have the range that Pat Orpey had. When we could, to make everything sound the way it did, we kind of need that little extra thing there. So that makes it a little difficult for us. It narrows the field down. But there's a couple people where we might look into, but we still don't know. We after we did the shows without Pat for the first time after we lost him. Again, Matt Starr did a great job, but it's just it wasn't Pat.
Right.
Pat wasn't there. So I'm glad we took some time, a couple of years to just kind of lay out. But a lot of people write all the time, and they really want to see the band. And so we would like to play for them too. So we'll see. We'll see if it. Yeah, nothing's certain at this point, but we're certainly strongly considering it.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's exciting news for everybody.
Right.
We would definitely love to see that for sure.
Excellent.
Billy, come see me in Chicago when you come around. Any band you got, I'm gonna be there, man.
Great, fantastic.
All
I'm
right.
glad to hear. Wonderful. Well, thanks for spending time with me today, and looking forward to playing in Chicago in that area as soon as humanly possible. And I'll see you there, and we'll have a hell of a time, I'm sure.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you so much for your time. A complete honor. I appreciate you.
All right. We'll see you again. All right.
Take care, Billy.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye bye.